Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, dear marketing enthusiasts, I feel very honored to be interviewing Philip Kotler today. Philip Kotler is the father of modern marketing. He has written over 90 books on topics like marketing, democracy, common good, and capitalism. He's a trained economist at the University of Chicago and MIT, and he has lectured for over 40 years. Also, he has received 22 honorary degrees abroad, and it's a great pleasure, Philip, to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Julia. I'm looking forward to talking about my favorite subject, marketing and people and good times. Yes.
Great. Before I start with the interview, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Julia Schlader. I've been working in marketing and sales for 12 years, and I also have my own growth marketing, consulting, and coaching company. And also something for you to know, dear viewers, at the end of today's interview, you will have some time to ask Philip Kotler your own questions. So as soon as they come up, feel free to type them into the chat window, and I will read them out to Philip Kotler, and he will answer them to you today live in this interview. So Philip, we've had a few calls before, and it's a really great pleasure to know you. And I really look forward to today's interview. Before I proceed, before we jump into the topic, would you be able to explain to the viewers the development from marketing 1.0 all the way to 4.0?
Yes. It turns out that we have to help professional marketers move with the times. There's so much new problems, new disruptions. And so most textbooks are outdated. I mean, certainly every professional marketer must have grown up with a textbook of 600 pages and often goes back to those books for help and guidance. But the truth is, many things have happened more recently, not in the textbooks. That led us to the idea of creating more periodic books of about 200 pages that would update professional marketers on the most important latest developments. Well, so we came out in 2017, I believe, with one book, which was called Marketing 3.0. We didn't start with a book on 1.0, but we used 3.0 to look backward at how marketing evolved all the way up to 3.0. So we defined 1.0 as the time when marketers assume that the customers are all rational, the marketers are rational, and the best way to sell something is to put a lot of facts out about the product and why it is different and it performs well. Well, the fact is, we began to realize that is more like the kind of selling they used to do in Russia, where they would put all that information, and it was not motivating. So we had to create something called Marketing 2.0 to acknowledge the growing role of emotions in guiding decisions made not only by consumers, but by even the CEOs too. Just think of yourself going in to buy something. You may even have a list. I would bet that in the store, you ended up buying more things than you meant to buy. So we see at the checkout counter some candy bars. We end up buying them. So emotions play a very big role, but also in the decisions of CEOs, because they're taking risks with very big decisions, and their own tolerance for risk, their own emotional mindset comes into play. So we were describing 2.0 as emotionally loaded marketing understanding. And then we defined 3.0 as a kind of a new way to think. Namely, a lot of consumers, hopefully a growing number, want to be what we call sane consumers, not insane, which no one wants, but they're sane. sanity is important. Buying products that don't harm you, not buying cigarettes, making sure that the products you're buying are not bad for the environment. That's 3.0. It's almost a more spiritual view of good buying, sane buying. So that took us to 3.0. Now, what happened is we started to move into a whole new generation called the digital generation. We had moved, remember, normally most marketing was using TV advertising very heavily, 30-second commercials, also using a lot of print advertising and fancy pricing and so on. But, the digital age was coming into being, and we had to capture that and ask professional marketers to start getting closer to the new social media that was appearing, Facebook, Instagram, and therefore they would, this may lead to a different type of marketing, which we call digital marketing. And it's not that it should replace all traditional marketing, but the two of them together would be more powerful than just traditional marketing. And that led to our Marketing 4.0 book, which was an introduction to digital marketing. So why are we at 5.0 now? Well, because there are new techniques in Marketing 5.0 in the digital age that we wanted to explain. So that's my long-winded answer to your question of what 1.0, 2.0, all the way to 5.0 means.
Great. Thank you so much, Philip Kotler. And I've read your books, Marketing 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0, and found it very interesting and insightful, and also to hear your viewpoints now in person. So looking at Marketing 5.0 now, and you've launched this book in 2021, what would you say are the main principles behind it? And I know you've prepared some slides, so whenever you're ready to show them, let me know and I will share them with the audience.
Yes, why don't you turn to the first slide? Mm-hmm. And then I will comment on that. Okay, that's fine. That's our first slide. And that's our second slide. Stop for a moment. It just shows the cover of the book, 5.0. Let's go to the next slide. Good. Okay. In the whole question of digital marketing, we introduce a view of how consumers make their decisions, and they go through stages. And it's well known that buying is a staging process, but ours is a little different than the ordinary one. Certainly, the first task of a company is to create awareness of your brand. Now, awareness is not enough. You want to also create an appeal. They must not only know you, but find you interesting enough to want to know more. And that's important because we introduced the word ask as the third stage in what we call the 5 A's. It's a way we say, what are the 5 A's of the journey? Because if you aren't prepared to answer a lot of questions, they won't buy because the risk is too high. So you have to anticipate how people who are interested in finding your product appealing, what would they like to know more? They might like to know, has your company been around a long time? How does your product differ from competitive products? So by anticipating the questions, you advertise the information, and then they feel more comfortable. More comfortable enough to act, to buy the first time. It could be anything from a small product like a can of soup, or it could be a car, but they act. Yeah. And you hope they're satisfied. And if they're satisfied, they will buy some more from you and have respect for you. So that's the customer journey. And it's made up of touch points. We have to reach a point where we could say, well, exactly what medium was used to make them aware? what ads, what vehicles at the touch point worked, and did your company look good at the touch point? Was it a moment of truth that the customer felt by your statement? So this whole problem is important, but I want to lead to the next slide, Julia, because it shows what happens. And this repeats the slide, but we're beginning to say there's really a state of transitions. And we need our marketing focusing on each of those stages. For example, what can we do to make an aware person a person who finds the product appealing? Well, we use things like branding, marketing, communications, and so on. And that we could spell out a lot of things that will create an appealing feeling in the customer, in the prospect who might become a customer. Another transition is after a person is finds it appealing, what kinds of questions do they ask? Well, we should do some social group interviewing, and we will get a sense of what new consumers might think about and want to know about. And again, there's another ratio between people who have asked a lot of questions and were satisfied enough to act. And finally, those who act, how can we make them into an advocate? Now, the word advocate is very important.
Great.
It's one thing to have a customer who buys a few times. Hopefully, that customer could be defined as a loyal customer. Now, a loyal customer is not enough anymore. It's wonderful if you have customer loyalty. You would like that customer to be enthusiastic. If he is in a conversation or she's in a conversation with someone about buying a car and they bought your car, this person who bought your car, if that person says, boy, am I satisfied with my car, that company makes really one of the best cars for that purpose. Then you have one or more customers who are going out of their way to praise you. And you know what they're doing? They are your marketing department. If you can't get your new customers to include a number who are fans of your company and talk a lot about you favorably, then maybe you're not a very exciting company, I mean. So advocacy is an important aim that we have. Okay, thank you.
Totally agreed. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment just so we see you bigger again.
Yes.
And also I think it underlines the idea of word of mouth marketing. So if you manage to really capture the attention and to make people and customers your advocates, I think we can all be much more successful in marketing.
Right.
And Philip Kotler, in your book, Marketing 5.0, you were looking at the customer journey, which is so important to optimize from the very start to the very end. But also you were introducing various different technologies that are becoming more and more important in marketing. What would you say are these main technological drivers and forces that we see and experience today as marketers?
Okay, turn to the next slide, Julia. It turns out that the 5.0 book wanted to also, next slide.
Yeah.
And that book wanted to mention some of the newer techniques. Now, could we make this slide a little larger?
Let's see if I... Is this large enough for you? I'll move over to the left.
There we go.
Yeah.
Because the book says some very important things here, and I'm just going to be brief about them. Namely, there are three gaps that this book is recognizing. The first one is called the generation gap, and that has to do with a company should ask who are our best prospects. You know, for some products, for example, if a company manufactures canes, you know, a walking stick, it's not for the young people. It's for older people who can use a cane and to support themselves a little more. So what are the characteristics of people who are in their 60s and 70s and so on? Or you might want to reach the youngest group of kids growing up on the new music. But what we are emphasizing is that everyone grows up during a special set of times made up of the music of the times, the central ideas that are driving people at the time. And we want to know what it was like for that target market, because we can use some flashback to those times they grew up in and use what we call nostalgic marketing, especially if there's a deep feeling, oh, what a wonderful life I had when I was growing up. Nostalgic thinking. So we spend a lot of time asking you to define the generation of the people you're trying to reach. But the digital divide was another problem that we took up because a lot of people don't have computers at the time. So what the computers were doing, making it more successful for people who had computers and leaving behind a lot of other people who were reachable, it really meant that we needed to use a lot of traditional marketing and mass marketing, because many people didn't have computers at the time. And so we had to do the blending of traditional and digital. And we wanted to recognize also prosperity polarization, namely the income differences that people had, because who are we aiming for? Can they afford the product? Where are they to be found if it's an expensive product, and so on? So then we went on and we distinguished different types of marketing. Data-driven marketing became an obsession. Namely, why should we just assume we know how people buy a car or any other product? Maybe we have to collect real data and do a lot of good marketing research. And maybe we need to have actual individual data, not just group data, but what is Joe like? What does Joe read? What stores does he shop in? What movies does he see? So things like that means that we became customer-driven, individual customer-driven marketing as a new prospect. In other words, you heard the term customization, how to make your product appeal to that specific individual. Or we would use the term personalization. We wanted to make sure this had a personal meaning to the person. So that was data-driven marketing. Predictive marketing was to set up your marketing tools so you could predict what the sales would be based on a set of variables. And usually you used what we call regression, multiple regression analysis, which took some key variables and their weights were allowing us to predict how many units of our product would be sold. Then we talked about, in the same book, augmented marketing. And it meant that you could do extra things. And a good illustration of that would be, let's say a person wants to buy some furniture from IKEA, and they don't know what it would look like in their room. So we can create a picture of their room where they plan to put the furniture, and we can superimpose the pieces of furniture that they might be interested in and actually design the room filled with IKEA furniture, which might be their living room or dining room or whatever. So that's augmenting the reality. It's reality marketing. It's using the real world of the consumer. Another example would be a woman who wants to know what she would look like to wear a certain dress. We can superimpose the dress on the woman in a mirror. And then we talked about agile marketing in times of great change. How do you remain agile? So now if we look at the other side of that example, we wanted to say that the main points in 5.0 marketing, it had 6 enablers. I'll read the list. The huge increase in computing power was changing marketing. The open source software was improving all the time. The widespread diffusion of the internet among more people than ever. Cloud computing made a difference. The ubiquity of mobile devices, the laptop, the mobile phone, and the fact that real data about real people, real individuals, was being collected. So all of that made 5.0 important, and that's what you find in the book.
So thank you very much for giving us so many insights into the technological forces and drivers. It was also really interesting to go, when I read your book, to go very deep into HR marketing, data-driven marketing, into all these aspects that influence us as marketers today. So that was a great summary about ongoing developments. When you think of companies that are currently using Marketing 5.0, which case studies or specific entities come to your mind?
Yes. One of them that I'm very fond of is the company called Unilever, and they are worldwide. The company was run by Paul Pullman, who was brilliant in his 10 years of running the company, getting their size up from something like 36 billion to 60 billion. But the main thing about Paul is he wanted to be sure that the company has a clear purpose. He distinguished actually between purpose, vision, and mission. Purpose is why you're doing something, and then vision is what you're doing, and mission is how you're doing it. And then he wanted to say that we are not just in the business of making money for the investors. Business is more than that. Business is about serving all the stakeholders. We're not successful at all if our employees are not successful, if our suppliers are not successful. So he distinguished 7 different groups of stakeholders. And they all were important to be rewarded. They should be sharing in the income produced, not just the investor. And then he said, my plan is always long run. I never make just a short run plan. In fact, I tell the market, I'm not even going to tell you how much money I'm going to make next year, because then if I were, you're going to hold me to it and it will reduce my flexibility. But I will tell you this, I'm going to double the size of the business over the next 10 years. I'm going to end up making sure that we're producing with more and more efficiency and less harm to the environment. And I'm also going to take up some social causes, because businesses are being affected by these social causes. And sure enough, he got everyone excited about it. And the proof was in the pudding. He absolutely grew his business to the size he said it would grow. And his business, he even told every brand manager, please define the purpose of your brand. In the case of Dove, the Dove products for women is to help them feel very beautiful and very worthwhile, not just use the soap to clean dishes or something else. So I would suggest that that's one example of a firm that is thinking marketing 5.0.
Nice. I really like that approach. And does another example come to your mind of a campaign maybe, or something where these technologies you introduced as part of your Marketing 5.0 book come into effect?
I also like to cite another company that I'm very impressed with. I do a lot of work in Japan, and the company YKK is very interesting because all of us are affected by YKK. Why? Because they make the world's best zippers. So someone with a purse or a briefcase or pants or whatever, where there's a zipper, it's YKK's brand. It's that reliable. But Mr. Yoshida and I worked together a lot, and I loved his concept of the firm, which is a 5.0 kind of concept, that it's there to produce value for all the participants, including the consumers, of course. He's very conscious that workers themselves should not only work for wages. That's not a way to have a strong income. He wants to make sure that they set aside money for their savings and for buying shares in the firm they're working for. Because in that sense, they would not only get a wage, they would not only get bonuses for working well, they will also get dividend returns because they love the company and it's part of their own shareholder business. Well, if you look at the diagram, it's a firm laden with value production. And remember, marketing is all about creating real value for all the participants. And this firm shows that.
So, Philip Kotler, a topic that also interests me personally is the topic of omnichannel marketing. I have recently held a lecture on it. It's a concept you introduced as part of your Marketing 4.0 book. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how do you see omnichannel marketing? Because from my viewpoint, a lot of companies want to get there. They're not there mm-hmm. yet. How would you describe the main principles and ideas behind it? And do you have an advice for companies that really want to implement it over the years to come?
Yeah, most companies start off with a single channel of distribution. I mean, a company that makes food for the public wants to be had on the shelves of supermarkets, let's say. But sometimes they go further and they add another channel and another channel. A good example would be Starbucks. Starbucks had one channel at the beginning, which the only place to get Starbucks coffee was to go to the shop, which itself was designed to be an experience away from home, a wonderful experience. People call that your third home. The first home was your home, and the second was your office, and the third was Starbucks. But that wasn't enough. Then they added the idea of the coffee would be obtainable off the shelves of supermarkets. So you can make Starbucks coffee at home. You don't have to be at a store. Then later on, as gas stations began to have candy and soft drinks and so on, sometimes you would see there a Starbucks outlet in part of the gas station. Now, what it means is they have three channels. Now, they normally have three different managers of those channels who don't really talk to each other. They each want to optimize the channel that they manage. But then it could create confusion if one channel's prices are way off the line of the other channels, if the ads are saying different things. So the difference between running your business as a set of it's called multiple channels versus omni-channels is whether or not you're managing them as one unit. Omnichannel means wherever they go for what you're selling, they get the same impression of the brand, its value, its price being reasonable, and so on and so forth. So it's a discipline put over multiple channels to make them all work with the same delivery of value. That's called omnichannel marketing.
Thanks for summarizing it. And I think as we proceed in the digital era, it's becoming more and more challenging for companies to actually incorporate these ideas across all the channels, no matter where people get in touch.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So you are based in the US, Philip Kotler. Thanks, by the way, for joining from Florida today. And you've had international collaborations all over the world. So what would you say are the differences in marketing in the US versus in Europe?
Well, I think that Europe has a thing they call the GDPR, which is really called the General Data Protection Regulations. And we don't have those as such. The Europeans generally value privacy and want to protect privacy. And it makes it a little different, therefore, for companies in the same international firms in the US, they can get a lot of personal data about people. Data that will help them to know whether that is a real prospect or not. So that data helps you be more effective in sending messages to people who might become customers rather than mass marketing. But in Europe, there's a lot of protection against getting data about individual people and what media they are watching, what magazines they are reading, when they shop, where they shop, how long do they stand in front of the wine section of the store. So I would say that European marketers will find that they have less efficiency than Americans have in what we call data-driven marketing. In other words, it will slow down even the multinational company that is operating in Europe and in the US. The US will have more efficient and profitable results, possibly, than the European marketers. And that delivers, however, to the European marketers more protection of privacy.
I have to think of a personal example because I was running marketing ads in the US and also in Europe. And during my time in the US, we could target people based on income. And I was very surprised that this was not the case in Europe. So I'm totally with you here. And so looking at the European companies then, and also let's say as an example, the fact that the AI tool Google Bard was delayed and could only be launched later in Europe versus the US. What advice can you give companies specifically? How can they drive innovation? How can they still be competitive without falling behind the US?
Well, there's some wonderful things about European companies that and the quality of their goods and services. I often spend time in Italy, and there's nothing like handcrafted products and the beautiful fashion goods, the leather goods, and that's the way they have monopolies too. You know, you might say that every company wants to be so special that there's no second firm that can compete with them. You remember maybe the German firms that were called, they had a name. They were small firms that were fantastically niched. They were the only ones making the world's best binoculars. Another company was making the world's best umbrellas, big umbrellas that wouldn't fall on people outside when they were supping their coffee or something. Those German brands were really monopolies in a sense. They were able to charge much more because their product was more special, and Germany thrived on a huge number of niched companies. So I think niching is a good strategy for European firms to become the master of some particular special touch that they put on that product that they're selling or that service. The real problem is, what about small businesses because many European countries want to protect their small businesses. And the fact is that it's the ambition of the big companies to buy up the small companies, get them under their own wing. But by the way, many small businesses get started because they want to build it up to a point where they will be acquired by a big company. They don't want to remain small. They want to get the rent from having created a business that someone else buys. But I still think that Europe is so many beautiful cities and places, and having the local bakery, having the local flower shop, having small scale, having products made within that very country that doesn't have to import from Asia or somewhere else, 40,000 miles away or something, products. We have to aim in Europe to keep cities distinctive and small and with regional supplies rather than international supplies.
Yeah, I also had to think about the Made in Germany claim or Made in Italy claim, which is very popular in the US. Yes, and you can really sell products just by putting this stamp on it. So just back to the most impactful companies in the world. And when you look at which companies have actually dominated the industries over the past decades, let's say in the 60s, there was the automotive industries. Now we've moved and transitioned to the tech and software companies. How do you think do these shifts impact the economy overall? And do you think we need to rethink our business models in Europe and abroad? And if yes, how?
Well, there's an article that came out recently called "Is Big Business Too Big?" And there is I have a friend named Jagdish Chef who has written a lot, and he proposes that most industries will end up with the rule of three. There will be three firms: the leader, the second one, and the smaller one trying to be the second one, and the second one trying to be the first one. And that bigness is part of the nature of things. Now, the fact is that many companies want to merge and acquire and grow. You wish a company would grow just on the basis of their organic offerings. No, that's not enough in many cases. So they grow by acquiring other firms. So we need good laws on mergers and acquisitions. We should say, for example, if Kodak at the time when it was such a great firm bought up Fujifilm, a company I liked so much and worked with, they would never allow that because the two dominant filmmakers would have been one company. So very important to have good competitive policy in every country to prevent mergers that would hurt the customer and reduce the amount of supply. And I would say that we have been a little sloppy about that in both the United States and Europe, that more regulation for keeping the markets all competitive must be worked on more vigorously.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So I'd like to take the time to allow the audience now and the viewers today to ask some questions. So whoever wants to ask Philipp Kotler a question, please type it into the chat now. And yeah, I see many responses. People really enjoy the interview with you today. A lot of people could join from all over the world, and especially from Europe. And so one of the questions I see here is, Philipp Kotler, what are the challenges to integrate AI into existing market processes?
Well, I should have mentioned what's happening with AI. It's so important. It turns out that many companies are using artificial intelligence in different processes and decision-making that they're not even aware of. But the most visible thing was to hear about algorithms, and that algorithms are going to do a lot of our decision-making for us. So let me just make a statement about that. Namely, just think of a banker. Every day he's asked for agreeing to make a loan to someone. And then you can ask it, has the banker had a good record? Did most of the loans get paid off? Because after all, we trust his experience in doing this for 30 years. But the truth is, when we look at what the banker's results were, we'll find that he made a lot of loans that never paid off. So that shouldn't happen. So could we see where he went off, and can we use his normal decision-making variables and improve on them so that where he made mistakes doesn't happen again. And that's called creating an algorithm. Now, if it's a really successful algorithm, you don't need the banker anymore to make decisions. In fact, the customer comes and says he wants a loan. The banker, instead of just thinking in his own mind whether to make a loan, he goes to the algorithm, he puts in the numbers because there are questions that must be answered, and then the algorithm says yes or no. And that's being done at universities now for admission to universities. They have an algorithm, and not just an admission officer. So more business decisions will be made by successful algorithms that minimize losses and so on. But the biggest thing in AI that has come along is called Chat GPT or generative AI. And there's different versions of it, but it's going to revolutionize even the marketing 5.0 that we talked about. In fact, it will be in maybe our 6.0 book. But the point is, we are able to put a question to the software, and the software can print an answer, an intelligent, readable answer. Like we might say, what is happening to what is the latest happening to the whole idea of influencer marketing, where some companies get a group of high visible people who are big influencers. They have very big networks, and they can pay these people to show that they use the product you want everyone to use. Well, that AI, generative AI, will give you a 3-page essay on what's happening to influencer marketing. And you could use that as the beginning of, now, if you were a copywriter and had to get a good message, you can ask the machine to make a message out of the points you make. And it's a very good starting point message. Maybe we're not going to need as many copywriters. Maybe the new system is going to generate ads for us. We just tell them we want an ad showing a pair of shoes of a certain pair of colors and floating in the air, and it makes an ad. So watch that AI will become essential parts of the marketing planning of the professional marketers.
I totally agree. And also from my experience, a lot of marketers are using ChatGPT already on a daily basis, and it does to some extent replace content writers. And also when you brought in the influencer topic, I found that very interesting because when I read your book and did some more research on it, apparently there's 200 artificial intelligence influencers already out there. So you don't even need humanity anymore to be an influencer, and you can control the content much better. Yes. Let's switch to another topic of one person in the audience. They're asking, what impact do you think does metaverse have, and what impact will it have on modern marketing?
Well, the metaverse means different things to different people, but you know that back in before even Zuckerberg and Facebook changed their name to Meta and talking about the metaverse, there was a thing called, I was a member of it, early something, but what happens is anyone could join. They become an avatar. They get a costume. They assume a name. They meet other avatars. Actually, you talk to someone else because you find their costume interesting. And then you could, it also moved to the stage where you could buy products or services. You could say, oh, I'm going to want to build a house and put a fireplace in the living room. And there was a person, a virtual person selling fireplaces, and money was being created and exchanged. So in the literal sense, a metaverse means you've created an alternative reality that really functions. It resembles the real world, but it is made up of avatars and sellers and buyers conducting business. And I had a son-in-law who became an avatar, and I remember he made a lot of money selling some furniture to others in that universe. The question may be, how far will this go? Is it just a plaything? Well, some people think it's a good way to test ideas by creating the artificial world, and that and that land will be bought by companies on this artificial world, and that these companies will put up a Disneyland in that artificial world of their own, and it could be exciting, but it's still not going to be mainstream for a long, long time. The real world will be the mainstream.
Yes, it's going to be very exciting to see how far this trend actually goes. And we've got one more question. What is the future of marketing automation, and what role does AI play in it?
Yes, very good question. All of them are good. The one about automation, certainly there's a lot of clerical work in marketing. A lot of files and folders have to be kept, and so that should be automated. You don't need people actually using their time for clerical purposes in marketing. Now, the real question is, can decisions be made by machine more, or by the cooperation between a live marketer and the machine? I almost always believe that if a machine can help the live marketer, then the team is fine. I don't think the machine's going to take over the whole job. There are pictures of a future where the robots take over. No, I don't believe that's going to happen. But here's the thing. Most marketers have to go to sleep at night, right? All of us. And therefore, who's taking care of the business? Let's say everyone who runs Unilever is asleep from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. But things could happen. A competitor could go make a price change or a brilliant ad move while everyone's asleep. So some people say, well, we should have what is called assistance. It's like a robot. It's like if anything happens to change while we're asleep, decisions will be made to protect us. But by anticipating what kinds of steps we should take if a price is cut by 20%. What should our automatic robot do about that? Because we're asleep at the time. So there's talk about some automation of decision-making, but in limited cases so far.
It's great to also hear your broader background, because marketing automation is a topic that's heavily discussed in digital marketing, and also to now see that you can take it further to a management board or decision-making while people are sleeping. So one other question we got from the audience is, which connections do you see between consumer branding and marketing and employer branding?
Oh, they are very intimately related. Don't forget to join the two in your thinking process. Let's take a hotel. Hotel may look very beautiful, rooms and so on, but the one who rents a room at the hotel finds when he goes into the room that it's not very clean, that there's a cigarette smell in the room which wasn't expected, and may find out at the basis the employees are not happy people. The people who are supposed to make the beds up carefully. They're underpaid. They're not proud of the place. They're sabotaging the place. So unless every hotel, outstanding hotel, is one that says our employees are our marketers, our clerks, the receptionists. From the moment someone comes in, everything should go right as expected, as we have designed our brand to say to people. And so we must get the best employees pay them the best we can pay, and then we'll be a successful business.
Thank you very much. So there's one question from a viewer. I actually thought about it when I read your book, because it's there's so many new developments and technologies being introduced. And this viewer now wonders, when are we going to reach the point where actually marketing 5.0 becomes reality or becomes true, and where we reach this state of ideal customer journey?
Well, here's the thing. The digital revolution was the big thing to happen, and that's what we talked about in 4.0 originally, and then all the tools came out in 5.0. And we're never going to be perfect in our marketing. There will be mistakes made all the time. But the thing is that we should have the mantra: we're in business to create value. Value in terms of not what we think value is, but what we think is value in the consumer's mind, and in the minds of our employees, and the minds of our suppliers and distributors. So basically, we are aiming to be an authentic firm, standing behind every claim we make. The brand is it could easily be damaged. It's worked on all the time. We need, to be good at it as a company, you better have 3 good managers in the marketing area: a good customer manager who knows how to attract and serve good customers, a good product manager who brings the latest things that we can offer to consumers to excite them and so on, and a good brand manager who can keep on top of the brand all the time and making sure that it sends the right messages that describe how we're adding and creating value for the world, for better lives to be led by more people.
And so specifically in the B2B industry, because that's another question, one viewer says there we heavily rely on relationships and word of mouth marketing. So do you think there will be a delay in terms of how quick B2B will adjust to these ongoing developments, or what is your view on that?
Well, B2B is is larger marketing than even consumer marketing, because behind every product that is sold to a consumer, there was so much work, so many business-to-business transactions to get the shoelaces and the shoes and the leather and all that. So B2B marketers they're often sales-driven too, but I think they are on top of things too. Remember, take car manufacturers. Cars are bought not only by consumers, but they are bought by other divisions that want a whole set of cars for their people, or trucks and so on. And B2B marketing, whether it's chemicals or trucks or whatever, has to be run by people who, as a matter of fact, B2B marketers usually know the customer much better because they have salespeople talking to customers, and they should be able to adjust more into the real mind of anyone they're selling something to than even the consumer marketer who doesn't know Joe versus Bob or Robert that well. Anyways, I'm very enthusiastic about Marketing 5.0. It's basically about bringing all these new developments to the mind of traditional marketers, so they move into the digital age. And it's not enough to know you're in the digital age of marketing, but to do your marketing digitally, as well as traditionally. Yeah. And we'll have more to say about that in these. We're coming out with 6.0 too, because there are other new developments that professional marketers are anxious to hear about.
Yeah, you told me 6.0 is coming out soon, but in the meantime, it's still Marketing 5.0. So one viewer is wondering, what key qualifications do you need as a marketer to actually succeed in today's marketing world? And I'm going to add one question to it. Is it actually one key qualifications, or does it really depend on the area within marketing?
Oh, I think that that all areas of marketing have to go digital now. And they also have to know about these new techniques, which we didn't have a chance to talk about. We did talk about AI and the idea of the algorithm and so on. All of these are relevant to all forms of marketing. But try to remember that a lot of marketing is product marketing, but products really exist as devices for delivering a service. And there's a lot of talk increasingly is keep your mind on the service or the value we're trying to create through the means of a product. Now, the other thing that's happening is many products are becoming dematerialized. We used to, in order to listen to music, we had to buy records. Now we just sign up with Spotify. We used to get a physical newspaper. Now we get it all on our computer. So there's a lot of dematerialization going on, which is good because we're in a world of climate change and heating, a world that is getting warmer because of our basic source of supply, which is the oil industry. And we have to be careful about how much product can the earth carry. And the dematerialization that's taking place is pretty helpful to reduce the amount of physical product and getting us to more to the purpose of products, which is service.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your questions very much.
Yeah, it seems there's so many more questions that people want to hear about, like your opinion about. So one of it is there's like a specific artisanal one-of-a-kind products you mentioned, and in reality we face limited targeting possibilities. And so, Philip Kotler, from your viewpoint, how would a marketing strategy, a Marketing 5.0 strategy look like that could still be successful with these limitations that we're facing?
Well, limitations are opportunities. They may be disasters for some, but opportunities for others. Those who people should never say, well, the world is pretty settled and there are no new opportunities. Not at all. And I often give a lecture on how some things were too settled and people were bright enough to break into them. For example, who would ever charge so much for a cup of coffee? When a coffee bean is just a few cents, why pay $4 for a cup of coffee? Or an ice cream that is as expensive as it is today when it's a good one. So there's always ways to either come out with the lowest cost or the highest cost. And there are always new things to be added to any area of enjoyment. So all good marketers are optimists, and they're creative people too.
Great. So we don't have so much more time, but let's do two more questions. So one question is, how about the nonprofit sector? What challenges and chances are important to consider in 2023?
Yes, well, I did a lot of work with nonprofit firms like the YMCA and the companies that are environmental firms and so on. Originally these firms were places that people with degrees in marketing went to because they didn't like business as much as the nonprofit purpose. And I had to spend a lot of time convincing nonprofit firms that basically they are businesses too. They're not businesses to make big profits. They are businesses to grow and create more value for people. And I even wondered whether how much to pay people who are CEOs of nonprofit firms, because it gets a little uncomfortable when it's a nonprofit firm paying millions and millions of dollars to the CEO. And some bad cases occurred like that. But we need a nonprofit world as rich as the for-profit world. We need more organizations that are there because they care, and that profit-making firms cannot pay attention to certain problems. And the question really has to do with whether education should be for-profit or not-for-profit, and whether health should be for-profit or not-for-profit. And companies and countries differ in that. And I think some of the very basic things like education and health have to be more of a nonprofit aspiration.
Thank you very much. I totally agree on that. And one funny short question for the end. What is your view on social media channels like TikTok, and how do you think will they be relevant in the future?
Yeah, well, I think the different social media platforms, and I have a whole book on the subject, are important. Facebook is going through changes now. Instagram went through great changes. TikTok has caught everyone by surprise. It's allowing more people to become visible around the world. All of a sudden, for dancing in a funny way for 5 seconds, and so on. TikTok, some people want to rein it in because they think it's taking too much attention and hurting some of the social media things. Just like another thing happening, the streaming movies have become a source of discontent, because people then end up watching one thing for several evenings when they should be watching different movies or doing other things. It's using up their buying time to just sit and watch a streaming movie for a long number of days. Lots of things are happening, but they're all challenges for the creative marketers around us.
Thank you very much, Philip Kotler. Also, thank you for you, dear audience. Just so you know, this interview will be recorded and available on YouTube next week. And also, we will include a link to the presentation in the comments of the YouTube video. Also, Philip Kotler and I were having 2 more interviews coming up, one on the topic of regeneration and one on the topic of entrepreneurial marketing. And I'm very excited to be asking more questions, and also to giving you, dear audience, the opportunity to ask your own questions as part of these live interviews. Philip Kotler, thank you so much for your time. It's such a great, it's so nice to really be in touch with you now on a more regular basis. And thank you so much for your ideas and thoughts on modern marketing. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, Julia. And I enjoyed very much your questions. They've made me think, and almost maybe another book will come out of my thinking about the things you've raised questions about and the audience raised questions about. Thank you.
Great.
Until the next time.
Until the next time. Bye.
Bye.